Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Charlie Mike, hosted by me, Mike Buchanan. Hey, listen, today we're going to be talking suicide prevention because that is the VA's #1 policy. It's the #1 thing that we focus on all of the time, believe it or not. That is literally our #1. So we're going to be talking to Josh Odom about suicide prevention and kind of like what is the program, why did he get into it, and we're going to talk about another couple things that have to do with suicide prevention or the program of suicide prevention in the VA that some of you may not even know about, like this thing called ReachVet, which I think is the coolest thing since sliced bread because the VA actually spent money on something that was really worth it. But I mean, that's neither here nor there. I don't want to get in trouble for saying the VA is spending money on stuff that they shouldn't. But I'm just saying, I really like this program and I want to kind of dig into it more so that you all can understand that this program exists as veterans or as people who are helping veterans. And so, yeah, I mean, and of course, that the crisis line, I don't want to say it's suicide crisis line, but the crisis line has rebranded. They have a new number as basically what it is. And so we'll get into that as well. So stick around and please watch. Also like, comment, subscribe, because why not? Please at least comment. I'm lonely. I really want to respond to people. All right, man. So listen, why don't we just get started with this? So why don't you just kind of tell us who you are and then what you do or why did you get into this in the first place?
Gotcha. So my name's Josh Odom. I'm a suicide prevention social worker for North Texas VA. I kind of, like a lot of people, like I got into my career here at VA because I was a veteran, or I am a veteran. So I was in the Army, and
cool.
One of the things that ended up happening with me is I did end up getting hurt. So I got wounded, went from Iraq to BAMC in San Antonio. And like, that was kind of just, it's pretty much like a kick in the face as far as like, hey, you're an infantryman and now you actually have to like focus on your mental health. Like, I was forced into it. I didn't want to do it, but It's like, hey, this is just your life for like the next 6 months is you're going to go to therapy.
It's your new mission,
and you're
right?
going to do all these things. So, So, that kind of became a part of my life. And then, eventually like that, as I got out, say, okay, I know, for me, like a lot of infantrymen, like it's like, okay, I'm going to go be a cop or something like that. And it was never really my thing. And I was like, okay, you know what? I want to be a social worker. So that's the route I went. As I graduated, the goal was always like, okay, I want to go work for like a WTU or Warrior Transition Unit. Like specifically, like I wanted to go back to BAMC. Logistically, like there's not a BAMC in Dallas. So
yeah,
like, so VA, here I am. And, I started off actually working in addiction. So I was working up at the bottom domiciliary. And then, an opening came up within suicide prevention. I don't think it was ever really like the plan that, hey, this is going to be my career is suicide prevention. There was always, definitely an interest there. But once, I really got into it, I mean, this is, I can safely say like, this is going to be my life for now. I don't see really ever leaving suicide prevention.
Yeah. And, I think that there's something to be said about those of you that choose to work in suicide prevention, right? And honestly, bravo, hats off. It's a very difficult department to work in. I can only imagine. I mean, because most of the veterans that you're getting to talk to are literally at their end, like at their rope, right? Like the very end of their rope, and they're pushed to the very brink. And so you're dealing with most of the people that are extremely irate or just extremely stuck. You know what I'm saying? And so like, my hat's off because like that has to be tough. My big question whenever I talk to any of you really, and I know I've probably asked you this before offline, but like, I just don't know how in the world do you guys stay stable and sane after hearing so many problems. You know what I'm saying? Like it has to take a toll on you mentally and professionally.
So, I mean, there definitely are some calls. So primarily like I work over phone calls. So like, they're going to talk to the crisis line, and then, anywhere from like an hour to, possibly the next day or so, they're reaching out to me, or technically I'm reaching out to them. And, it can be tough, but the biggest thing with our team is like we're always supporting each other, and you can't take anything personally. If you take things personally, you're not going to last within this department, at least, because you are dealing with deep topics. But more than anything, like, you're helping people. So we can deal with so many different situations. So it might be that I have a veteran that's frustrated with his care, and like that's the crisis. And they can scream at me and cuss at me, do all kinds of things. If I take that personally, I'm gonna get burnt out so fast, and I'm really not gonna last here. More often than not, like with someone like that, like you let them kind of get that out, and then you'll truly like get to the kind of like the underlying issue. It's like, okay, this is where we can start to actually get you moving forward into care to kind of resolve these issues. Focused more towards like suicide. It within our department, of course, like, yes, we are seeing deaths. You do see these things, and it can be very tough. But I think more than anything, it kind of instills in us like even more like the fact of how important this is, that we've got to be really working with these vets to make sure that we're getting them engaged in care.
Yeah,
like that's my main goal always. Like, okay, getting veterans engaged in care.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I totally agree, and I know that our numbers somewhere in the deep span of numbers that we have for everything that is suicide prevention, because I mean, I wasn't kidding when we first started this. It is the VA's #1 priority out of everything is suicide prevention, period. I mean, there's nothing in the, like, I'll give you for instance out there, okay? So, like, how most companies have swag, whatever, right? They have, like, squish balls and, like, little pens and whatever, okay? No other department at the VA has swag except for suicide prevention. Only because they were like, well, we need this. Like, this is because it's our #1 priority. Like, we need the community to understand that there's a crisis line, that there's this number that, and so like they took such a deep seated, I guess, interest, right? The VA did such a needed interest in this program that they were just like, no, we're gonna even buy swag. That's huge for a government entity to be like, yeah, we're gonna buy swag.
Yeah, I mean, it's any way that you can get that number out there.
Yeah, exactly.
And I mean, gun locks, nationally, the amount that we spend on gun locks. And I love the fact that like we're willing to spend money on gun locks, because those things, I mean, they're not cheap. And if we can get as many people gun locks as possible, like, that's working towards lethal means restriction. Like, I love the gun locks. It goes a long ways.
Yeah, you're right. And I love the gun locks, and people always ask, like, well, why do I have this gun lock? Well, what's the purpose, right? Of this gun lock. And I always tell people, listen, it takes you like a couple of seconds to rethink, do I want to commit suicide, right? And so if you have this gun lock and you hide away the key, or someone else hides away the key or whatever, right? Even if you know where the key is, it's still going to take you that couple of seconds to go and get the key that's been separated from the gun lock, right? And so in that couple of seconds, it could be the time that you needed to actually go and call for help, or go and get help, or rethink the decision to commit suicide. And so I said, that's the whole purpose of the gun lock, right? Am I wrong?
Yeah. One of the things that we always put out is like, it's seconds to minutes. Anything that you can put, as a barrier to, someone choosing to act on those thoughts, like whether it's a gun lock. Some, people get very creative with it. So like sometimes they'll, throw the key in like an ice cube, and freeze that. So it's like, okay, it's got to melt before, I can get to that. Even, to the other end of the spectrum, to where like, you might have a vet that's like, okay, I'm not willing to put a lock on my gun because, if I feel threatened, I want to be able to have the opportunity to use it. So even with those, like, we have some magnets, so like a refrigerator magnet, like throwing a refrigerator magnet on it, or just, a Post-it note that says, hey, think. Anything that can just hopefully like trigger something in your mind to where like, okay, call the crisis line, reach out to someone, do one of these, a million different things that we could do beyond, thinking, okay, I'm going to die by suicide.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about this. So let's talk about ReachVet real quick, because I love this freaking program. I love it. I think it's cool. I think it's awesome that, the VA does create a lot of cool things. Sometimes, not even really create, because they didn't really create this. I don't know if they created it or not. I don't think that they did. Beside the point. Okay, so the VA comes up with some pretty cool ideas sometimes, okay, and it implements things into the way that they do stuff, and in society a lot of time, like pacemakers, right? It's really what I'm getting at. Like, we created pacemakers, which I think is really cool. I loved it when there's this one guy that was arguing with me one time. I can't speak. Arguing with me one time, and he's like, the VA gave us nothing and gave us veterans nothing. I was like, didn't you just say that you had a pacemaker? And he's like, yeah, what of it? And I said, well, you can thank the VA for that. Right?
It's like, gotcha.
You're welcome. Your heart ticks because of the VA. Okay. So no, I mean, but I think that this is a really cool program. Let's kind of talk about what ReachVet is. As far as I know what it is it's basically, it's almost like an AI kind of program that kind of scans through our records to see if we're at risk. Or we have things that may be in our chart or things that have been happening with us in our chart that would put us at risk for suicide. Am I correct?
Correct.
Okay.
So what ReachVet does, it uses predictive analytics, like kind of a dumbed down example that I like to throw out there is like, think of it kind of like Moneyball, but for like any sort of adverse event, such as hospitalizations and, veterans dying by suicide. So what it does is it's pulling from, I believe right now it's at about 140 different data points within veterans charts. So everything that we do with veterans, that's getting documented. So certain medications, they're going to carry a higher score. Certain like mental health diagnoses, those are going to carry a higher score. Pain, like your pain index, that's going to go into their age, race, all these different demographics. I mean, there's tons of different things that it's really drawing from, and what it ends up doing is it puts like a weighted score to that veteran's chart. And then once a month, what they do is they pull that data, and it identifies like the top 0.1% of veterans that are at risk for some sort of adverse event, namely like hospitalizations and suicide. So, it's one of those things to where, we see that like it is effective. I think, with it being a new program in VA and, it's very technical, a lot of the time we're like, well, what is this really doing? Does it work? Being the ReachVet coordinator, I see it working every month, like to where, someone will come up on that list. We'll start reaching out to their treatment teams just to let them know, like, hey, this is a veteran that, we can, they would benefit from enhanced treatment. That's the ultimate goal. But it'll identify them, and then, here it is a couple of days later, and they might actually be hospitalized. So I do see that it predicts these things. And, like I kind of talk in circles a little bit. But,
it's fine.
The ultimate goal there is that once they're identified on it, we're going to start reaching out to them. We're going to review the chart and see like, okay, maybe like it's a veteran that's disengaged. So they're coming into the ER, but they're not really engaged with mental health. So, this is our opportunity to really make sure that we're getting them connected with us, that we're getting them into care. We're re-engaging with them to like assess their risk for suicide. We're doing all these different things just to make sure that, hey, we're keeping that vet safe and that we're doing everything that we can do.
Yeah, I think it's super cool. I mean, I can't tell you enough. I love your guys' department. I just do. I love the department because I think that, like as we do outreach, right? And so we're constantly talking to the community, but you really take that to a whole nother level. I mean, you really do, your department. You are talking to some of the people that have the most problems, the most adverse reactions with us as the VA, and you're flipping it on its head almost, right? To where you're bringing them back into the fold, because studies have shown that if a veteran has even had one interaction with us, they're like however much percentage less likely to even go to such means as suicide as an option or whatever it is. And that's just one time of coming and talking to us. And maybe it's not even talking to mental health. Maybe it's just talking to a doctor for one time, right? But I think that what it is, for me at least personally, what I think is that it's because having them come in and talk to the VA at least once, right? Now they know that there's somewhere that they can go, right? Or somewhere where they can be heard. Even if they don't feel like they can be heard here all the time, at least they know that they can be heard here most of the time. And especially with the crisis line, especially with your staff. I've never heard your staff say a bad thing ever. And that's pretty uncommon, okay? Because I mean, really behind the scenes, like that's pretty uncommon. Because like everyone has their horror stories, right? I mean, every department does. Your department legitimately just loves veterans, just loves them. And I think it's great. I just think it's wonderful. You guys help so many people, and it's so good. So good.
So, I mean, with our team, like specifically, I mean, we have people that have so much experience. Like I'm definitely I'm kind of on the newer side of things. So, you know, I got to the team in 2018, but I mean, we've got a lot of people on our team that, you know, they've been with VA for, 20 plus years. They've been working within mental health for, 30 plus years. Like there's tons of experience, and, every bit of that really kind of comes in, because, you kind of have to know basically a little bit of everyone's job rather than just like suicide prevention, because I mean, it goes so much further than there. Kind of circling back to like your actual question there, as far as like, how those numbers change versus like, okay, engaged with VA versus not. Yes, like there are numbers to support that, being engaged with VA, you are less likely to die by suicide. I think on the other side of the coin, like being engaged with really anyone, that's a huge piece there.
Mm-hmm.
Whether you're a veteran or not, being engaged with healthcare, very specifically towards mental health.
Yeah.
But all that stuff, that's gonna, you're less likely.
Yeah.
And just because you have that support.
Well, I mean, that's what I tell everyone. Like even, some groups of veterans are like harder than others, right? To really like outreach to. I don't know if you know that, but I'm sure you do. But certain groups like pilots, okay, like aviators, okay. Aviators are the toughest because they're constantly hiding everything, okay. They hide how they feel, they hide their mental health problems because they don't want to get grounded. Like they're hard, okay. They're hard to work with. But I always tell them, listen, I don't care if you feel like you have problems or not, okay. I don't care if you actually do have problems or not. What I do care about is that you're engaged with some sort of organization. Like, who are you engaged with, right? Outside of just yourself and your job and your family. Like, who are you engaged with? Well, no one. Okay, well, go get engaged with someone, right? Because, like, it not only gives us a space to go and to ask questions, right, and get resources from these organizations, but it also gives us a renewed sense of purpose and camaraderie, too, as veterans, right? And you may not need that right now if you're just, like, recently transitioning or something. But one of these days, you're going to want that in your life. You're going to really need that in your life because your life is not always going to be roses, and it's going to hit that point to where it's going to hit a pivotal point or pivot point. And then you're going to need something like that. You're going to need someone like that. And I try to remind people to do that all the time, but it doesn't mean they listen to me.
Like, I mean, even just like going to like your one primary care appointment a year, like if you at least do that, like, okay, by the time, November comes around and like your health just falls out, everyone gets bronchitis, like allergies, flu, like, okay, at least you have something there.
We train our employees too to like, now we're doing these like lunch and learns with our department or whatever, and so like one of those is like I do this talking to veterans lunch and learn, and then I talk about like, listen, this might be the only interaction that this veteran gets from people, literal people, all year long is when they come in for this appointment. And so, like, be nice. Like, don't make their one human interaction a bad one. Like, just be kind. Like, you don't know. You don't know what this person is going through right now. You don't know what they're coming in here with, right? But the thing is, like, we should just want to give them the best service possible and always think that, like, they could possibly not be having a great day, right? I mean, like, why not? Why not always just be like, oh, well, maybe their day isn't so great. I'm going to try to do something to make their day better. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
No, and I get that. Like my favorite thing to just put out to like, especially like that vet that's like super heightened or just maybe they're kind of like going off. like it always it kind of throws them off. It's like, what's really wrong?
Yeah.
And it's like, if you just stay calm, it's like, what's really wrong? It's like, it kind of like, it's like a little stopgap there.
Yeah.
And that ends up going so far.
Agreed. I like to do accountability all the time with vets like that, right? Who are like consistent, like just complaining about like 10,000 different things, and they're all, because like, honestly, I try to present reality supportively. And I think that's what your department does so well, right? Is that you're not necessarily just removing all these obstacles for them that they want. Okay. You're just presenting what is reality. Like, this is reality. This is what we can do. And this is what we can't do. Okay. This is what truthfully, honestly can be done for you. And this is what no one can do for you. Right. But you present it in such a supportive way to where they just go, okay. Right. Like I can accept this as my new normal kind of thing. Right. Instead of you basically, you're the butcher taking the elephant apart piece by piece to be able to feed it to them piece by piece, instead of them trying to literally engulf and the entire elephant choking on it.
Yeah. I mean, it's so much easier being with VA because, like, I mean, you can get things done that you just couldn't do in the community, just because, I mean, we have something for pretty much everything. I don't have any experience really working in the community, and there's no way I could go back to that now. I mean, I wouldn't want to, but I mean, there's more often than not, we can find something. We can't work miracles. There's always going to be things that we can't work. But like you were saying, let's break those things up. More often than not, we can find some way to at least get moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, you give them someone to listen to them, truly listen, right? I mean, active listening is extremely important in what we do as public servants, right? But I think that a lot of the times, a lot of us don't do active listening. We're just not good at it. I mean, it's a thing that you really have to practice, right? I mean, is it not? It's something that you really, truly have to practice.
You do. Yeah. And, some people are better at it than others. Like, I feel like, the more you just listen rather than talk. Like, I'm not a big talker, so like, that's like my thing is I usually listen, and you get further that way.
Good for you, because it's very difficult for me. I'm a huge
you're
talker.
Definitely a talker. So like, we're the exact opposite
yes,
here. Yeah.
I am a huge talker. But I have noticed throughout this podcast experience, of doing this, that I've had to learn to be a better listener. Plus, my wife tells me to shut up all the time, and she's like, I don't need you to solve my problems. I just need you to listen to it. I'm like, well, that makes no sense. Why wouldn't you want me to solve your problem? I mean, it's a problem. Why wouldn't you want it solved? But again, it comes back to kind of what you guys do, right? You don't necessarily have to solve their problems, okay, in what you do. You just need to present reality supportively. I know I say it a lot, but it's really what it is. That's all you're doing. Yeah. That's all you're doing. And I think I think it's great. Listen, let's talk real quick before we kind of wrap this up. I want to talk about the kind of rebrand of the 988, right? So now the crisis line, instead of that long number that no one can ever remember. I mean, you guys remembered it because it's part of your job. I know, I know Heather, one of your other employees, because she can just rattle that number off like it's her own phone number. It's just insane. But she's kind of, cup full all the time, like to the max, insane anyway. So, yeah.
So yeah, so recently we switched over to 988.
Okay.
So, like, I think it's like through, I forget exactly where in Europe they actually started with that. It's where they switched to the 3-digit number, but the goal here is like accessibility. So you almost want it to do the same things like 911. Like, you don't forget the number to 911. Mm-hmm. I mean, unless you're just really probably in a panic. It's like, okay, well, what's the number to 911?
That's why in every other country it's 999. Did you know that?
Yeah, I did not know that.
Yeah,
honestly.
so it's 999 because if you're in a panic, you just hit the same button 3 times.
And that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, I'm guessing there's some sort of reason. Like,
we're just awesome. We're awesome.
No,
we're awesome. That's what it is.
Just because, I mean, I know there was a lot of thought and actual research and education that went into okay, why are we doing this? It definitely rolls off the tongue a lot better than 1-800-273-8255.
See, that's what I'm talking about. You guys are nuts. How do you remember this?
So you have to repeat it so many times. So you start to memorize all the phone numbers. So I know most of the mental health numbers just kind of by heart. Like, I always keep a sheet close by just in case, but you find yourself okay, I know these things. I know some of our mental health numbers quicker than I know my wife's phone number, just because I'm never dialing it.
Oh, you heard it first. He said
hey,
it. You should get him in trouble.
It's already already pulled up on my phone.
Okay.
So she's a contact.
Okay.
I'm not dialing out from any numbers. Do not listen to this guy. Okay.
Mrs. Odom, how dare he?
So I'm looking at the camera over here. Ignore all of this. I love you. So lost my train of thought.
Yeah,
here. Thanks, Mike.
that's fine. You're welcome.
Yeah.
No, so 988. I think it is cool. I think it's cool because for those of us who don't do this job all of the time, okay. But I do talk to a lot of veterans out in the community, right? For us, it's way easier. I mean, it's way easier for us because before I'd have to be like, oh crap, hang on, let me get this card out and then let me tell you the whole phone number, or I'd have to like take them to the website or whatever, or send them like a hyperlink. But now it's so much easier for us out in the community. Now we can just be like, oh, it's 988, press 1. 988, press 1. It's so easy. It's so easy for us.
I mean, you want it to get like one step further from that, which is like, okay, almost to where like we stop calling it the crisis line.
Yeah.
To where it's like, okay, it's just 988.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that they really want that, but like in my head, that's something that would be beneficial.
Maybe like a veterans helpline.
Because just, you hear 988, and it's not just a veterans line. It's for everybody.
Right. You're right. It is.
But just veterans press 1.
Mm-hmm.
But anybody can call.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. And it doesn't have to be a crisis. Not at all.
And that crisis, it could be like, okay, I don't know how to engage with care. I don't know what my benefits are. Is there even a VA like anywhere around me? It can be A to Z all the way up to, that veteran that's actively suicidal. So you never really kind of know what they're going to get on the other end of the line. So it can really vary, but calling, it doesn't matter. Like if you feel like it's a crisis, call.
Yeah. Or if it's not a crisis.
Yeah.
Yeah, just call.
Like we get people who, their crisis is just that, hey, they're just lonely.
Yeah.
And they hit that point. It's like, okay, I need to talk to someone. I need to actually engage with someone, and it's there for them.
Yeah. Well, listen, man, that's about all the time we have. But thank you so much for coming in. I really do appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
And Miss Odom, seriously, don't take that. Me personally, I wouldn't take that.
Don't take Mike personally. So yeah, no, we're good.
All right, listen, that's all we got for you today. Thank you so much to Josh for coming in and handling my jokes and talking to us more about suicide prevention and the program and the new 988. Even though he could rattle off that number like better than his wife's phone number. So listen, always remember that we are on YouTube, and to make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And no matter how things seem to be, just Charlie Mike.
At least I got something to lay